Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are going to unpack some research on a pretty fundamental question.
Okay.
Is handwriting still relevant, in our world of keyboards and touchscreens?
Mm-hmm.
We've got a stack of sources here, historical overviews, cognitive science studies, even some neuroscience thrown in.
Yeah.
And it looks like the answer is a lot more nuanced than just typing is faster.
I think so.
Are you ready to have your mind slightly boggled?
I think I am, yeah.
I know I am.
What's really intriguing here is that we're not just talking about two ways of putting words on a page.
Right.
We're talking about two totally different ways our brains work.
Yeah.
And the research you've gathered suggests that handwriting might be doing a lot more for us than we realize.
So handwriting isn't just about pretty penmanship.
No.
There's like a brain-boosting element to it.
Exactly. You see,
Okay.
for centuries, handwriting was the way humans learned and documented information. Cognitive psychologists believe that the act of physically forming letters on paper actually creates stronger neural pathways, linking our visual and motor skills in a way that typing on a keyboard simply doesn't.
That makes me think about kids learning to write.
Yeah.
It's such a painstaking process.
It is.
But maybe that's part of why it's so important developmentally.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Those early years are crucial for brain development. And handwriting seems to play a role in building those foundational connections.
Yeah.
But it's not just for kids.
Right.
Research shows that handwriting engages the brain differently, even in adults.
Okay.
Take the hippocampus, for example.
Okay, refresh my memory. The hippocampus is all about.
It's the part of our brain that's essential for forming new memories.
Right.
And studies have shown that the hippocampus is significantly more active when people are writing by hand compared to typing. It's almost like handwriting gives our brains a more intense workout, helping those memories stick better.
So it's not just about taking notes.
Oh.
It's about actually absorbing and remembering information.
Right. And this gets really interesting when you contrast it with typing.
Yeah.
While typing is obviously super efficient for speed, sometimes that efficiency can lead to something researchers call cognitive overload.
Cognitive overload. It sounds kind of scary.
Well, imagine this.
Right, yeah.
You're typing away, your fingers are flying across the keyboard, and you can type much faster than you can think.
Yeah.
The problem is your brain might be struggling to keep up with all that information pouring in. It can end up feeling overwhelmed.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I've had moments where I realize I've typed a whole paragraph and I have no idea what I just wrote.
Exactly. And that's where handwriting shines. Because it's a slower process. It forces us to slow down our thinking, too.
Yeah.
We have to be more deliberate with the words we choose and how we organize our thoughts.
Okay.
And that deeper level of engagement can actually lead to better comprehension and memory retention.
It's like the slow food movement, but for our brains.
Mm-hmm.
Taking the time to savor each bite. Letter leads to a richer experience.
And the research backs it up.
Right.
Some studies have shown that students who handwrite their notes consistently perform better on tests than those who type.
Wow.
It seems that the act of summarizing, paraphrasing, and putting things into our own words helps us truly understand and internalize the information.
So while typing can sometimes lead to mindlessly copying down information, handwriting forces us to be more active learners.
Precisely. And it's not just about the mental benefits.
Oh.
Some of the research you found even touches on the physical and emotional benefits of handwriting.
Okay, so we've got brain power and stress relief all in one.
Well, think about the fine motor skills involved in handwriting. You're using all those tiny muscles in your hands and fingers, developing coordination and dexterity that can actually translate to other tasks as well.
Makes sense, especially for kids who are just starting to develop those skills. But how does handwriting tie into stress relief?
There's something about the slower, more rhythmic motions of writing that can be quite calming.
Okay.
Some people compare it to meditation or even a form of mindfulness practice. It can help to quiet the mind and focus your attention in a way that's harder to do when you're surrounded by digital distractions.
I never thought about it that way, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I know I personally feel more centered and grounded when I'm journaling or writing things down by hand.
It's like taking a break from the constant stimulation of the digital world and reconnecting with something more tangible, more grounded.
So we've covered quite a bit of ground already.
Right.
Handwriting boosts our brains, helps us relax, and builds important motor skills.
Uh-huh.
But what about typing? I mean, let's be real. Typing is pretty much essential in our digital world, right?
Absolutely. And that's actually a perfect segue into our next point.
Okay.
The sources you've gathered really grapple with the question of how handwriting and typing coexist.
Right.
And whether we might be losing something valuable as handwriting skills decline.
Yeah.
Especially among younger generations.
It's like we're trading one set of skills for another. But is it an even trade-off? That's a big question, and one I'm really curious to explore further.
I agree. And the good news is that the research offers some interesting insights into how we can potentially find a balance and leverage the strengths of both handwriting and typing.
So maybe it's not about ditching our keyboards and going back to quill pens.
No.
But about finding a smarter way to integrate both into our lives.
Exactly. And that's where things get really fascinating.
Okay.
The sources you've collected actually highlight some emerging technologies that are trying to bridge the gap between handwriting and typing.
Okay.
Bringing the best of both worlds together.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's dive into that after a quick break.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before the break, we were starting to talk about how technology is changing the way we think about handwriting and how we might be able to blend the benefits of handwriting with the convenience of typing in our digital world.
You know, one of the things that jumped out at me from these sources is this idea that the slower, more physical process of handwriting might actually be a key ingredient in unlocking creativity.
Okay, explain that one to me. How does putting pen to paper spark creativity?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
When you're handwriting, there's a certain rhythm and flow to it.
Right.
You're engaging your senses.
Okay.
You can feel the texture of the paper, hear the scratch of the pen, see the ink flowing.
Yeah.
It creates a kind of sensory feedback loop that can be very grounding and calming.
It's like a mini meditation session every time you pick up a pen.
Exactly. And because handwriting is slower than typing, it forces us to slow down our thinking as well.
Exactly.
Instead of just rushing to get our thoughts out, we have to be more deliberate. We have to pause, ponder, and really consider our ideas.
It's like giving your thoughts space to breathe, rather than just spitting them out onto a screen.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And that space, that slower pace, can be really fertile ground for creative breakthroughs. It allows for those aha moments, those unexpected connections that might not happen when we're typing away at lightning speed.
So it's not just about writing down ideas. It's about giving those ideas room to grow and evolve on the page.
Precisely. And the research seems to support this idea.
Okay.
Many writers, artists, and even scientists have talked about how handwriting helps them brainstorm, sketch out ideas, and make connections they might not have made otherwise.
That makes me think about those big whiteboards you see in brainstorming sessions. Maybe there's something about that tactile, visual experience of writing by hand that just unlocks a different part of our brains.
You know, that's a great point. It's not just about the words themselves.
Right.
It's about the way we interact with them physically, visually, even spatially on the page. And that kind of interaction seems to prime our brains for creative thinking.
It's like the difference between listening to a song on your phone and seeing a live performance. The live experience engages you on a whole other level.
I love that analogy. It captures the essence of what we're talking about.
Right.
And, you know, it's interesting because some of the sources you've shared even touch on how technology is trying to mimic that handwriting experience.
Oh, yeah, like those tablets with styluses where you can write directly on the screen. Are those actually effective? Can they really replicate the feel of pen and paper?
The jury's still out on whether digital tools can fully capture the cognitive benefits of handwriting. But there's definitely a movement towards creating a more natural handwriting-like experience in the digital realm.
So maybe we're not headed for a world where handwriting completely disappears.
Right.
Maybe it's more about finding a hybrid approach, a way to blend the best of both worlds.
I think that's a really insightful observation.
Yeah.
It's not about choosing one over the other. It's about understanding the unique benefits each offers and using them strategically.
So maybe for brainstorming and creative tasks, handwriting reigns supreme. But for things like writing emails or reports, typing is still the way to go.
That's one way to think about it.
Okay.
And, you know, there's another aspect of handwriting that I found really fascinating in these sources.
Okay.
It's not just about our brains, it's also about our bodies.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does handwriting benefit us physically?
Yeah.
We talk about the fine motor skills for kids.
Yeah.
But is there more to it?
There is. Handwriting engages a whole network of muscles and nerves in our hands and arms, building strength, dexterity, and coordination.
Yeah.
It's like a mini workout for our upper bodies.
I never thought about it that way, but it makes sense. You're constantly making tiny, precise movements with your fingers and wrist when you're writing.
Exactly. And that kind of fine motor control is actually really important.
Yeah.
Not just for obvious things like writing,
Right.
but for a whole range of everyday tasks.
Like what? Well, think about things like buttoning a shirt,
Okay.
using chopsticks,
Okay.
playing a musical instrument.
Right.
All of those activities require precise hand movements. And handwriting can actually help develop those skills.
So handwriting isn't just about improving our handwriting.
Right.
It's about improving our overall dexterity and coordination.
Precisely. And, there's even some research suggesting that handwriting might have benefits for people with certain medical conditions, like Parkinson's disease.
Wow, that's fascinating. I had no idea the impact of handwriting could be so far-reaching.
It's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
It is.
And it makes you wonder if we've been too quick to dismiss handwriting in our rush to embrace the digital world.
I know. I'm starting to see handwriting in a whole new light.
Yeah.
It's not just an old-fashioned skill. It's a powerful tool for boosting our brains, our bodies, and even our creative potential.
And speaking of potential, there's one more fascinating aspect of this whole handwriting versus typing debate that we haven't touched on yet.
It's the question of how these two approaches to writing impact learning, especially in the digital age.
Okay, that's a big one and a perfect topic to dive into after a quick break. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been having a really thought-provoking conversation about handwriting versus typing.
It is fascinating.
And before the break, we were about to delve into how all of this relates to learning.
Right.
Especially in our increasingly digital world.
One of the things that struck me while reviewing these sources is how much concern there is about declining handwriting skills among young people.
Yeah.
They're growing up with keyboards and touchscreens. So it's natural that their handwriting might not be as developed as previous generations.
Yeah, that makes sense. But is it really a problem? Typing is faster and arguably more efficient for most tasks these days.
That's a valid point, but the research suggests that there might be some unintended consequences to this shift away from handwriting.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to learning.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
Well, there's a growing body of evidence suggesting that handwriting plays a unique role in helping us process and retain information.
Okay.
Remember we talked about how handwriting engages different parts of the brain, including the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory formation.
Right. It's like handwriting gives our brains a more intense workout, helping those memories stick better.
Exactly. And there's something about the slower, more deliberate process of handwriting that seems to force us to engage with the material on a deeper level.
Okay.
We have to think about what we're writing, how to organize it, and how to put it into our own words.
It's like we have to slow down our thinking to match the pace of our writing, which gives our brains more time to absorb and process the information.
That's a great way to put it. And because typing is so much faster, there's a risk that we might just end up mindlessly transcribing information without really thinking about it. It can become more of a rote exercise than an active learning process.
It's like the difference between listening to a lecture and actively participating in a discussion. You're going to get a lot more out of it if you're engaged and asking questions.
That's a fantastic analogy, and the research seems to back this up.
Okay.
Several studies have shown that students who handwrite their notes tend to perform better on tests of comprehension and recall than those who type.
So it's not just about the act of writing itself. It's about the cognitive processes that handwriting activates.
Right, and that's why some educators are starting to worry about the potential impact of declining handwriting skills on students' learning and academic performance.
So what can we do about it? Are we destined to become a generation of keyboard warriors who struggle to remember anything we've typed?
Not necessarily. The really exciting thing is that technology might actually offer a solution.
Oh, okay.
Some of the sources you've gathered highlight some really innovative approaches that are trying to bridge the gap between handwriting and typing.
Okay, give me some examples. What kind of tech are we talking about?
Well, think about tablets with styluses.
All right.
They allow you to write directly on the screen, capturing the feel of pen and paper, while still having all the digital advantages of editing, sharing, and storing your work.
Yeah.
Some even have handwriting recognition software that converts your scribbles into text.
So it's like having a digital notebook that's searchable and shareable?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is, and some of the research suggests that using these types of digital handwriting tools can actually lead to similar cognitive benefits as traditional handwriting.
Really? So even if you're writing on a screen, the act of forming those letters with a stylus might be enough to engage those key brain regions.
That seems to be the case, and it's not just about tablets.
Right.
There are also software programs that simulate handwriting on a computer, allowing you to create digital documents with a more personal handwritten feel.
So it's like we're starting to see a convergence of handwriting and typing with technology, finding ways to combine the benefits of both approaches.
Exactly, and that's what makes this whole topic so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not a simple either situation.
Right.
It's about understanding the strengths of both handwriting and typing.
Yeah.
And finding ways to integrate them into our lives in a way that supports our learning, our creativity, and even our overall well-being.
This has been a seriously mind-expanding deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the humble pen and paper.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely going to be thinking more carefully about how I use handwriting and typing in my own life.
I'm so glad to hear that. You know, one of the things I love about these deep dives is how they challenge our assumptions and open our minds to new possibilities.
Absolutely. So to wrap things up for our listeners, what would you say is the key takeaway from all of this research? What's the one thing you want them to remember?
I think the most important message is that handwriting still matters in our digital world. It's easy to forget the power of putting pen to paper, but the research is clear. Handwriting engages our brains, our bodies, and our creativity in ways that typing simply can't replicate.
So don't be afraid to ditch the keyboard sometimes and pick up a pen. You might be surprised at what you discover.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of handwriting versus typing. We hope you've learned something new and maybe even gained a newfound appreciation for the art of putting pen to paper. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hands writing